Ladies and gentlemen, welcome wrestling fans worldwide to Knoxville and the Great Smoky Mountains for the Ron Fuller Tennessee Studcast.
6 feet 9 inches tall, 265 pounds.
This historic podcast from one of the most respected and successful wrestlers and promoters will follow the footsteps of the largest and oldest wrestling family on the planet.
Listen to what I'm saying. That's right. Bring that camera in here a little bit closer.
Through 93 years and 4 generations.
The stud has arrived.
Old school or new fan, this unique broadcast will educate and captivate as Ron details decades of professional wrestling's growth with truly unforgettable stories.
I want those people out there at home to hear the stud.
Sit back and enjoy the ride with the Tennessee Stud.
The Tennessee Stud. You will learn that name. You will remember it.
And now,
the stud is here.
All right, folks, here we go. Welcome in. It's David Summers hosting another Studcast with the Tennessee Stud, Ron Fuller. It's the story of wrestling in America as told by the stud, whose family started the profession 100 years ago. Let's step back into the ring and back into time. In the Great Smoky Mountains, there ain't no hoss like the Tennessee Stud. Ron Fuller. What's going on, Ron?
Jeez, man. Good day. Beautiful weather, blue sky. Everything is great, man. Warming up a little bit. Sometimes it feels like it's going to be an early spring here. Although the groundhog, I don't think, said that. But,
yeah. I think he was mistaken because by this Saturday or Friday, actually, I think we're going to be in the low 80s, and we had 2 or 3 days like that last week. So maybe the groundhog was mistaken this time. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he was a little bit wrong this time. I sure hope so. But but it's got a beautiful day today, man, and just been enjoying it. And as usual, pretty busy. Got some stuff going on, man.
Absolutely. You always have stuff going on. I tell you what, it seems like every Studcast now is loaded with action and something totally new, Ron. Can you give us a hint about what we're going to be talking about today? Because I just found out about something special for the next Studcast. So tell us what's going on.
Well, today, man, we're going to be going back into Chilhowee Park's Jacob building. We're going to pack that sucker to the walls, too, man. Got a tremendous card that would have probably just about filled the Coliseum, and we're going to cram as many people as we can into that building that's made for 3,000, 3,500, and see if we can get 4,000 plus in there. And it's going to blow the doors off that son of a gun, man. So the biggest crowd ever in that building we're going to have for a wrestling event anyway, and for any event of that type in that building. And fans, we're going to be shocked, man. And this one, I believe people were going to be shocked listening to it, and actually seeing it was even worse. Somebody in this one is actually going to get his arm broken for real in a match.
Oh, stop it. Are you kidding? All right. Was it something that was supposed to happen or not?
No, it wasn't. But neither was my father's injury 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
When he went to the hospital.
Yeah.
So, it just shows that, the wrestling business might have been a work, but guys got hurt regularly in it. And someone was making that trip, going to be making it in this Studcast to the hospital to get his arm set, man, to get back to being normal.
Well, we barely scratched the surface, and I can tell this is going to be a good one. So things were really getting real back then. So maybe a little too real. Speaking of being real, I'm sorry, Ron, if I'm out of line, but I can't wait for fans to know about what you told me is going to be happening next week on the Studcast. We're going to have a rare appearance by a guest live on a Studcast to celebrate the opening of your new territory, Southeastern Pensacola, with its first ever event in Dothan, Alabama, my hometown, on March 3rd, 1978. Now you're moving into my territory, my years. And by the way, it was your 30th birthday.
Yeah, pretty crazy, man. Open up a new company on your birthday.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I guess that I guess that's what they call it, man. I guess Dave, you just kind of let the cat out of the bag, but that's all right. So, yes, we're going to have a special guest next week, and we're going to also be discussing not just the opening of a new territory, which that's what we were doing, and not just Andre the Giant wrestling in both of those territories next week. We're also going to have a pretty darn good Andre story that we're going to give fans next week. So, wow, it's going to be pretty well loaded. Then a special guest to boot, man. So, and we're going to have that special guest is going to be Charlie Platt, man, the commentator for Southeastern Pensacola Wrestling. And he's going to be live with us. And plus, we're going to hear that first interview I ever did next week on the first Southeastern TV show produced in the WTVY studios in Dothan, Alabama.
Wait.
The one that you get a lot of what we open our show with.
Yes.
From that interview.
Yeah, from that. Yeah. Okay, wait. Are you telling me you invited Charlie Platt over to my house? What the hell were you thinking? What?
Yeah, he says he knows you very well, man. So he's looking forward to it. So.
Charlie has visited here. He's always welcome. I love to kid with Charlie. I don't like when he puts me in a headlock. I don't like it at all. All right, but listen, that's going to be fun, and I can't wait to have Charlie here and having him a part of this Studcast Live. I really can't wait. But I hope you don't mind, Stud, but there is another first for you that's going to be extremely exciting for fans. You now have your own streaming channel, ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. Let me say that again, ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. It is going to blow fans away. When they go to ClassicContinentalWrestling.com, they're going to find everything that has made Ron Fuller Welch a historic wrestling figure. I hope I haven't overstepped my boundaries on this, Ron. But to me, this is really huge news for all of your fans and true wrestling fans all over the world. And I think it's big news for you as well.
Well, to me, this is kind of the next step in my comeback to wrestling, after being out of the sport for almost 30 years. And I've been, trying to make a comeback here. And this is where fans can find literally everything that I have done in the past, as well as everything I've done since I returned to the sport, which is about 4 years ago or more now that I came back to the sport. And I've been doing Studcast. I've been doing Super Studcast. I've been doing all types of different shows. So this site is going to capture the story of my wrestling life, basically, streaming all the way through Southeastern, through Continental Wrestling, through USA Wrestling, even some Gulf Coast shows. And all my Studcasts, my entire novel, Brutus. I'm going to read it and read the entire book in audio form over a course of a period of time on that site. Stud Stories, Southeastern Classic Films will still be there, special documentaries. And the first that's going on this streaming site is going to be with the Continental and USA favorite Wildcat Wendell Cooley.
Wow.
Documentary on Wendell Cooley. And that documentary is going to be followed by others. We're going to be doing a lot of video projects in the future, man. And so the new content is going to be added to that son of a gun every day.
That's cool. That is going to be so fantastic for fans all around the world. Everybody that's a fan of you, and they're really going to be excited. Only $4.99 per month or $39.99 per year. And listen to this, fans. It is free for the first 7 days after you sign up. Also, you can gift your subscription if you want to at any time. You can gift it to somebody else. It's available now. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. Get a free 1-week ride beginning today into Stud's streaming history. Speaking of riding today, so where are we headed first?
Well, we're going to begin another today's training. And we've been starting it with that for quite a while. And this one's going to cover some owner responsibilities based around this date we're talking about, on that great day of March the 3rd, 1978, the opening day of Southeastern Pensacola. And it's going to start with me dropping Andre off at the hotel and where we're going to be staying in Dothan, Alabama there. And And then I'm going to continue on in the taxi ride after we flew in there and go on out to the WTVY TV station outside the city. So we'll be doing that today. And this is going to be my first time in that studio. And I'm going to meet personally for the first time Charlie Platt. And I'm also going to meet for the first time the director of the TV shows for the next 7 years there, a guy named Wayne Register. Great guy.
Yeah.
Did a tremendous job.
Sure enough. Wow.
And then we'll be riding back to Knoxville for the big card, man, on Sunday, February 26, 1978. And it's going to cause a door-busting crowd in the Jacobs Building in Chilhowee Park. Thousands of people are going to get turned away. And then we'll discuss the last February TV and the rating period in 1978 that maybe wasn't as loaded as the rest of the months that we've been doing. But this one, boy, is full of surprises. And we're going to also talk about the results of that card of February 26, 1978, and the attendance. And then we got another great learning tree question. Why was Pensacola, Florida, becoming the home of Southeastern wrestling rather than Mobile, Alabama, where your father had chose in 1954 when he opened Gulf Coast Wrestling?
I think I know
That's a good question right there.
I think I know the quick answer to that, but I'll hold it for later. All right, listen, it's another loaded Studcast. I'm loaded. I hope I make it through this thing. I'm just kidding. I'm not loaded. We better.
Yeah, man, you're kind of loaded in a way all the time, man.
All right, we better get started, Stud, if we want to get to that learning tree question. I know you got a lot today. Where do we start?
Well, it's the training session. Today's training is going to give fans an idea of what it was like to take care of one of what I consider to be the most important things leading to the success of a wrestling company, and that was your television show. And I had spoken to Charlie Platt many times in the last few weeks preceding this first time down there about his employment, about his responsibilities, and what was to come. Basically, what I expected is going to happen down there, or I hope to have happen anyway. And we'd sent several TV shows already produced in the Knoxville territory down to the station in Dothan, Alabama, WTVY. They sent it on to Montgomery. So we were being seen in that area down there for about a month before we went. But this was going to be my first opportunity to meet also not just Charlie Platt in person, but first opportunity to meet the new director that I'm going to be dealing with for these extremely important television shows, man, vital to your company business. The studio was already set up for the TV show the next afternoon when I got there by taxi. And I sat down with Charlie at the desk in front of the set that still had Gulf Coast Wrestling on the back of it, on the front of it. You know, it wasn't a set that said Southeastern. And I'd just not had enough time to get a new set made. But it really didn't matter in my mind. The shows we had been sending in from Knoxville did not have anything on the set behind Les. So, you know, people didn't know. Obviously, the fans in that part of the country at that point were probably confused about what was happening to their Gulf Coast Wrestling in the last couple of months. There was a couple of periods a week where they didn't have any show, and then we started sending them shows, but we didn't have a name for the company. They just were seeing some of the wrestlers, which is really what needed to happen. So Charlie Platt asked me the same question that I figure most of the fans out there watching the TV shows each week were probably asking each other. And he asked me, how and when will the fans become aware of what the name of your new company is? And I answered him as honestly as I possibly could. I told him, in my opinion, I said the name of the company was far less important than the quality of the wrestlers and the wrestling that the fans were going to see from here on out. That they wouldn't care. I didn't think that they were going to care who presented the show, only how good the program was and how much they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So for many weeks, the Gulf Coast logo remained behind Charlie, maybe even months as I think about it. But the most important thing about it all was the product in the ring in front of Charlie, not the set behind him. And by golly, I think that product was far superior to what those fans had seen, maybe ever. So then Charlie took me upstairs into the control room. and he introduced me to my Southeastern Pensacola director. Wayne Register was his name. Great guy.
Yeah.
And Wayne had been every Saturday for the last few weeks, like I said, putting those state-of-the-art TV shows we were sending him, produced in Knoxville, on the air down there. And he couldn't wait to tell me when I was introduced to him how blown away he was by the production techniques used on those shows that he'd been putting up, you know. And I was really impressed by his recognizing some of the things we were doing, and his definitely his appreciation for what he called, in his words, he said, "It's the best wrestling TV show I've ever seen."
Wow.
You know, so he mentioned the animated opening of the show. He mentioned the chroma key background that we used to display the still shots behind the set to open every show. He mentioned the rotating Greek wrestler statue, man, that we used as bumpers to open and close different segments of the show. He mentioned the split screen and how we used two cameras on the same shot. And most of all, the thing that really blew him away the most was instant replay. He had never seen instant replay on the wrestling show.
Yeah.
So when he mentioned that, it kind of took me back to the first day in 1975 when Les and I met our Knoxville WBIR TV director, Bill Kincaid. And we sat with Bill and we described over a 20-minute period of time all these futuristic ideas that we had, production ideas that we had in mind, and asked if he could do any of them. And I'll never forget his answer. He said to me, he said, "In this production room, Ron, I can walk on water." And then I instantly wanted to help Wayne Register walk on water for the Southeastern Pensacola territory, same way Bill Kincaid had done for us in Knoxville. And I'd learned a lot from Bill Kincaid. And I asked Wayne, since he talked about the instant replay, I asked him, I said, how many 2-inch tape machines do you have here? And we were in the production room. He took me back there and he pointed to him and he said 2. And obviously I could see him. So I told him right then, I said, then Wayne, you can do instant replay. And he lit up like a Christmas tree. It's like, are you kidding? Well, how? You know, so in less than 15 minutes, I taught him what Kincaid had taught me. Because Kincaid had walked me through the process of how to do an instant replay. I knew exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
And when I finished and he did it, and he was so proud of learning something that he thought was almost impossible.
Right.
And so did a whole lot of other television stations around the country. You know, we were the first to do the instant replays.
Yeah.
And a lot of stations didn't know they could do it. They didn't know how to do it. So the next day, when we made that first Southeastern Pensacola TV, there were 4 instant replays after all 4 of those matches.
Wow.
Over the next 7 years, Wayne Register became, for me, a Bill Kincaid. He walked on water every time he made a TV show, and that made Southeastern Pensacola's TV just as good as Knoxville's.
Man, you really lucked up when you had a man like Wayne Register who not only really knew his stuff, but he was open-minded as well. He was willing to learn. So that had to be the first sign that this is really going to go great.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. Like I said, man, he recognized the difference between the programs. He appreciated all those special things that was in that show, and he wanted to do them. He wanted to learn it. He wanted to do it. And by golly, he did. He figured it all out and really quick. Yeah,
and if anybody could, Wayne certainly could. What a legend. Okay, another great today's training stud. I really love these segments. Now that I think about it, having watched Gulf Coast TV shows before Southeastern started, there was a huge difference between the two shows. So what was the card? February 26, 1978. And let's go back to Chilhowie Park in Knoxville.
Well, this card was going to be smaller than what we'd been running on a weekly basis for the last probably 6 weeks. While we were making these 2 wrestling shows, we were putting a lot of wrestlers on those cards on Sunday because we could keep them in town, get them in there on Saturday, do TV, and then keep them there for Sunday. And so we used them that way. And but a lot of those guys at this point, now we're about ready to start up there. They've already left Knoxville and they've moving down to Pensacola. So it was also that way because we smaller cart, because we knew the smaller building was not going to hold, man, what we had been drawing. It was really tough to have to go into a small building when we were drawing 5,000 or more and knowing that this building is no way it's going to put that many people in it. So it was all still loaded with the card, though, with great wrestlers. And that was really important. We had some tremendous talent at that point. It's a smaller card, but by gosh, all good. And the best way to tell how good the card was is who is on the first match. And on this night, the first match, and actually it's a Sunday afternoon, the first match was Jimmy Golden.
Wow.
And he opened the match the night against Doug Gilbert, who was the returning pro, who had been there for quite a while and was coming back for a short stay. Ricky Gibson was in the second match. He had his shot at the constantly interfering manager, Gorgeous George Jr., in a single match. And Joe LeDuc battled the Hangman. And in the Texas Death Match, Ronnie Garvin was eager to get his hands on Roy Lee Welch again, which he had been eager to do for about 3 out of the last 5 weeks. And in the Southeastern Championship match on this card, the Mongolian Stomper, managed by Gorgeous George Jr., is going to be defending for the first time ever against Tony Charles. The main event was a 6-man tag in a steel cage with Robert Fuller, the Tennessee Stud, and the Georgia Jawjacker facing off against Ron Wright, Don Carson, and the Assassin.
Wow. Indeed, another great card, Ron. So what happened on the Saturday TV show the day before this card, the big run-up?
Well, Les ran down the card for the day, as we started off all the shows with. It had no championship matches on this one, but it had some very unusual ones, like a surprise first match, great personality profiles on it, and another 6-man tag is going to be on this one. So when the cameras backed away from Les, Gorgeous George Jr. was there sitting with him. The Stomper had his Southeastern belt on, and he had his truck shock, and he was cranking that sucker big time. He had him a big sweat going. He'd probably been cranking it for 30 minutes before he went to the set. And the still shot on the set behind them was from the TV show the week before. And it showed Ricky Gibson with a sleeper hold on Gorgeous George Jr. In the studio, right? So Les told fans that GG had demanded, and he made it specific that the fans understood. He said, and GG's sitting there, and he said, GG, I want you and all the fans to be aware that you demanded from Don Curtis that he see this video and the entire incident that happened to you last week. And the picture behind us tells what the problem is, and that big shot of Ricky Gibson put the sleeper hold behind him, and he sneaked up. So Les asked Kincaid to run the video. And that's what evidently and Gigi said he wanted Don Curtis to do, by gosh. So it showed Gibson sneaking up behind Gigi and applying a sleeper hold after Gigi had hit Jimmy Golden with an object. And, it didn't show that part, but it showed him, getting the sleeper hold put on him. But then Gigi ignored the hitting of Golden, but he got real indignant about what happened to him as the video ran, about how the heck, what kind of person sneaks up on a man. And then when it ended, Gigi, basically, he was happy with himself, and he got up to leave. And he said to Les, he said, it looks like I put Don Curtis in his place. He said, since you had to open the show with the video I demand, I guess he's listening to me, so Les says. So, and he's about to walk off with Stomper, and Les says, oh, wait just a second. Before you go, he goes, I want you to watch another video with me, the Don Curtis. He said, this time Don Curtis demanded you watch this one. So Gigi, unhappily, he took a seat again, and he was wondering, I'm sure, what tech's going to go on. And a second video popped up, and it was from the match 6 days earlier with Ricky Gibson against his Stomper for the Southeastern title. And Gigi instantly asked Les, why are you running this? So, and about that time, it showed Gigi taking an object from his jumpsuit, and that he always managed in, and knocking Ricky Gibson unconscious with it. Then the Stomper just walked over and covered Gibson for the win. So Gigi got angry and demanded to know what this had to do with him. So Les says, well, before you get too excited here, he says, I want you to watch one more video. So all of a sudden, the next person that popped up on the big screen behind the man was Don Curtis. And Don was very brief. And he started out, and he said, he basically said, I don't like people demanding me to do anything. He said, he said, I had seen this incident from TV last week, the one that you were put the sleeper on Gigi. And he says, but I have much more often seen the type of incident that was just shown in that last video, where Gigi is doing something to somebody else. And he said, basically, it's proof that Gigi, as a manager, had been consistently involved in matches, making himself more like a wrestler than a manager. So that he said, so now he says, I'm going to make a demand of you, Gorgeous George Jr. He said, since you wanted to be involved like a wrestler in matches, it appears that that's what you want. It's time for you to become one. He said, and he says, just to make sure that happens, he says, you're going to wrestle on TV today, right now, first match. And tomorrow, you're going to wrestle in the Coliseum against Ricky Gibson.
Oh.
No, Gigi, well, you can imagine Gigi, well, the studio exploded before Gigi and the Stomper did. They beat him to it. And Gigi jumped up from his seat saying he wasn't a wrestler anymore. That he didn't even have any wrestling gear here.
I'm a manager. Come on.
Yeah. And he don't have any clothes, no wrestling tights, no boots, no, the whole deal. So Les, instead of feeling sorry for him, he yelled over to Phil Rainey, who's standing by the bell there that's going to do the announcing, and he said, ring the bell for the first match, Phil. So the fans were going nuts in the studio, man, and Gigi, when Stomper, was going nuts too. And the studio just got louder, man, because the guy that came into wrestling was Wildfire, Tommy Rich, man. He slid up in the ring. Oh, Wildfire was always ready to go.
Oh, my God.
And, so they left the Stomper and Gigi standing outside the ring. They were looking at Wildfire up in there, and Gigi's trying to tell the Stomper, I ain't prepared. Whatever the conversation was. And Stomper it was so loud, Stomper put his hands over his ears, which wasn't unusual for him. It got loud in that studio. And Ricky Gibson entered the studio behind him. They didn't know he was there. Kind of like he had done the week before. And he grabbed Gigi by the pantsuit and he threw him in the ring, and then he disappeared. He was gone. Well, now, man, the studio got even louder, boy, and they all were on their feet, man. Tommy Rich flew into old Gigi. Wow.
I mean, what's crazy, Stud, is it sounds like the end of the TV show, but this is the beginning of the TV show. Yeah,
they normally end kind of like this, but this one gets off to a bang. So I was just beginning, it was just beginning, especially with this being the first match. And Tommy did everything you could imagine to Gorgeous George Jr. He bumped him. He threw him everywhere. He put holes on him. The crowd couldn't sit down, man. They never got quiet. I mean, they just roared. They were loving it. And soon Gigi was just dragging, man. He was totally blown up, and he sunk down into the ropes, just hanging on in desperation. And Tommy's just nailing him with punch after punch after punch. So Gigi, kind of in desperation, man, he reached up, grabbed Tommy by the trunks. And then he dropped down on his rear end, and he kind of shot Tommy over his head and through the ropes and out onto the concrete. Tommy wasn't expecting it. He hit face first on the concrete. And the Stomper's standing out there, right? So Gigi grabbed the ref, and he turned his back, turned the referee around. His back was the Stomper. And so the Stomper could do what he wanted, basically. And Tommy rolled over, made the mistake of rolling over onto his back, and Stomper was backed off a little ways, and boy, he flew like a bat out of hell. He stomped Tommy right in the face on a concrete floor.
Oh.
And Stomper quickly picked up the limp body because it about knocked Tommy unconscious, and he kind of just rolled Tommy back and put it into the ring, and Gigi walked over and covered Wildfire, and the ref counted him out. And Gigi was couldn't get up. He crawled over to the edge of the ring, and Stomper just reached and grabbed him like a baby, threw him over his shoulder, and carried him to the dressing room.
Oh, my God. Wow. All right. So that's an incredible way to start a TV show. So what do you do after that? How do you follow that? Wow.
Well, the Stomper and Gigi didn't follow it. They failed to show up for the first interview right after that first match as scheduled. And so Ricky Gibson and Tony Charles, who's going to be wrestling Stomper, they just came out and took the whole interview. And Ricky was ecstatic, obviously, about Don Curtis allowing him to have a one-on-one match with Gigi in the ring, and Tony loved the fact that he was going to get his first shot at the Southeastern belt, and he wasn't going to have to worry about Gigi because Ricky was going to be wrestling Gigi a couple matches before that, and he looked at Ricky and he says, "I don't think he'll be able to get to the ring, will he?" And Ricky says, "No, he won't be there." So basically, Ricky is going to take care of his butt. So they both got up from the desk and they high-fived each other. Man, the studio cheered them. Man, it was quite a celebration in the first part of the show. And then the party continued on. Man, Tony went straight to the ring. He hadn't been on TV in a while. He got him a really strong win. And then Gigi and the Stomper, they finally made it out to take the second interview. And they were fired up by then. Gigi had caught his breath, and they were mad. So Gigi told fans that by no means that they had any idea what kind of wrestler he was. And neither did Ricky Gibson or the Southeastern commissioners, Don Curtis, and that Don Curtis had opened Pandora's box, man, and nobody knew now what was coming next. And that his Stomper was going to give that little limey from Great Britain the wrestling lesson of a lifetime. Then he was going to stomp his face, and that crooked nose that Tony Charles had was going to be straight again.
Oh, my God.
You're going to stomp his broken nose straight again, basically.
He's going to do him a favor.
Oh, yeah, do him a favor, stomp his broken nose back straight. And the fans didn't much like how the last interview ended, but the first part of this show, man, was rocking, I can tell you that.
Absolutely sounds like it. All right, listen, I'll tell you what, let's take a breath. This is a great place for a break. Be sure and stay with us for this break. In it, we're going to be talking about how to set up this next week for you on YouTube, Southeastern Rewind. The personality profile is coming up when we return, and it's with Robert Fuller, the Tennessee Stud, and the Georgia Jawjacker. That is going to happen when we come back right here. Last week, Southeastern Rewind on YouTube featured Studcast number 238 on Wednesday, February 23rd, the double World Championship night of February 20th, 1978. Harley Race versus Joe LeDuc and Nelson Royal versus Tony Charles. Thursday, February 24th, Continental Wrestling Show number 17. Great championship matches with host Gordon Soley from November 9th, 1985. Sunday, February 23rd, Southeastern Classics number 4. Ron Wright versus Louis Tillett, 1976. Monday, February 28th, we released Gulf Coast Clip number 1. Cowboy Bob Kelly versus The Intern. Date unknown. And Tuesday, March 1st, Stud Story number 21. NWA champion Tommy Rich. So now here's the schedule for this week for Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. For the week of Wednesday, March 2nd to Tuesday, March 8th. Wednesday, March 2nd, Studcast number 239. Ronnie Garvin breaks Roy Lee Welch's arm for real. Thursday, March 3rd, Continental TV number 18. More great Continental action with host Gordon Soley from 1985. Sunday, March 6th, Southeastern Classics, number 5. Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden versus the Southeastern Tag Champion Von Steiger Brothers, 1976. Monday, March 7th, Gulf Coast Wrestling Clip number 2. Tuesday, March 8th, Stud Story number 22. Vince's Greed number 2. Don't miss it on Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. All right, welcome back to another Studcast. It's David Summers with the Tennessee Stud. Let me mention this again. It's brand new. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. You got to check it out. Only $4.99 per month, $39.99 per year. And listen to this, fans. It is free for the first 7 days after you sign up. Check it out. If for some reason you don't like it, you're not obligated, but we know you're going to love it. Also, you can gift your subscription anytime to someone else. It's available now. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. Get a free 1-week ride today into the Studs streaming history. You are gonna dig it. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. You got to check it out. Okay, it looks professional. I looked at it. I think it's the real deal, and this is the one you're going to want to be a part of. All right, so we're back for the personality profile. I assume, Stud, this one is going to be about the upcoming cage match the next day, right?
That's correct, man.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
And it also has a very good video, man, in this profile of a wild 6-man tag in front of well over 5,000 fans from the week before with that big double world title night. More than 5,500 fans. Wow, big full Coliseum. Rob, the Georgia Jawjacker, and the Tennessee Stud finally had their opportunity to sit down with Les, as Carson and Wright and the Assassin had the opportunity a couple weeks earlier and discuss pretty much everything that had been going on. They talked a little bit about the interference on loser-leave matches that had caused both Ron Fuller and Bob Armstrong to have to leave Southeastern. They talked about the new Southeastern commissioner, Don Curtis, and how much all three of them respected him. And gosh, everybody respected Don, or he beat the hell out of you. You know, he was a tough dude. And then they talked about the steel cage matches and how being a 6-man steel cage match, that it was going to require all 6 men to be in the ring at the same time, because a big 20-foot ring was not going to allow you to get out on the apron and tag back and forth. So all 6 guys going to be in the ring in a steel cage match. And speaking of that steel cage match, it brought up the video from the last Monday's double world title card. And that was a 6-man tag. It wasn't in the cage, but that video showed the punishment the Assassin took, man, on his lower body in the 6-man Texas death match. That's what the rules were in the 6-man tag the week before. And it showed how the Assassin wasn't able to get to his feet anymore, finally, and he was counted out. And then the video showed all 6 of the guys. None of them left the ring, and we end up fighting out there on the floor and all over the building. And, so it was a reason for having a cage match. And basically that video explained it. Picture was worth 1,000 words. Wow. At the closing of the profile, the 3 of them predicted that the cage match the next day was going to see somebody get hurt badly.
It seems like to me that like every match on the upcoming card for the next day was getting some real huge attention. To me, like a pay-per-view would today, all the matches were really ready.
Yeah, and that's kind of what made territories and TV shows great back in the day, especially when we had talent bookers, man, that had more than 2 angles going at a time. This TV had 4 angles going, Mm-hmm. So the Ricky Gibson and the Gorgeous George Jr. match has been involved here. You've got Gorgeous George had to wrestle already. You had Ricky Gibson throw him in the ring to get there. You got Tony Charles and the Mongolian Stomper match coming up the next day, and they're already involved and had interviews. You got the 6-man cage, and then you got one more, And the last one is going to end up being probably the most important of all of them.
Yeah, and so only 6 matches on the whole card. The last angle had to be the Texas death match between Ronnie Garvin and Roy Lee Welch, right?
Yes, sir, man. You kept up good with that card, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good guess, and that's where the focus is going to go next, man, in the third match. So
Okay.
Roy Lee Welch, he joined Les at the set to watch the video from 5 days earlier, and where Ronnie Garvin in a no DQ match did everything he could. It was no DQ, so he could do anything he wanted to. He threw him over the top rope. He did everything illegal that he wanted to, but he couldn't get the pin, And so again, it didn't happen for Ronnie Garvin. He had yet to beat Roy Lee Welch. So for the third time in the last 5 weeks, Roy Lee just would not be beat. So the next match, the following day, was going to be a Texas death match. That one's no time limit, no disqualification, and ain't going to end up in a draw like these other did. This is going to have a winner. Got to be a winner, Texas death match. So Ronnie Garvin passed by the set. Roy Lee was still there, sitting with Les, and he was on his way to the ring for the third match. And he yelled as he went by. You could pick up his voice. He said to Roy, he says, "Watch this. This is you tomorrow, man." So his opponent was the unluckiest guy of the day. I can tell you that. So
Wow.
Garvin literally took him apart. He beat piece by piece, man, before jumping off the top rope in his throat. But then instead of pinning him like he normally did, Garvin turned this guy over on his stomach, and he turned him over in the direction so that he could face Roy Lee Welch, who was still at the set. And then he sat down in the guy's back. He put his hands underneath his chin, and he reared back as hard as he could. You could almost hear the guy's vertebrae crack, man, and the guy screamed so loud you could pick it up, man. And the crowd was booing like crazy at that point. Oh wow, it was horrible. So the ref, he'd seen enough. I mean, Garvin should have pinned him already, and he's just punishing him, man. So the ref grabbed Ronnie Garvin's hands, and he tried to pull him away. But then Garvin wouldn't let him, and Garvin screamed loud enough that you could be picked up on Les's mic. He says, "This is you tomorrow, punk."
Uh-oh.
So the ref rang the bell again and again, but Garvin still wouldn't stop. So when he finally did, the ref just reached down and he raised that poor guy's hand that's laying there darn near decapitated, and they disqualified Ronnie Garvin. But Ronnie didn't care. He never took his eyes off Roy Lee. And Roy Lee got up and left the set. I mean, wow, that's Garvin's making a big statement, basically. And Roy's seeing it.
Yeah, no doubt. That's pretty intense. So how did this TV show end?
Well, it was another 6-man tag. This 6-man tag made a record 3 out of the last 4 TVs had a 6-man tag on it. And I don't think it ever happened again. Ron Wright, Don Carson, and the Assassin were in this one, man, and they destroyed their 3-man team quick like. And they had the entire 2 minutes for the interview because Robert and the 2 masked men, they'd had their interview already during the personality profile.
Okay, so you were not wrong when you said earlier that this last rating TV period was not as loaded with championship matches as the other 3. But in my opinion, maybe it could have been the best all of the February TVs combined, in my opinion. So what happens the next day?
Well, Jimmy Golden, he continued to string of big wins over the wrestler that hadn't been there in a while, Doug Gilbert, the pro. And Ricky Gibson went to the ring for his match with Gorgeous George Jr. But Gigi never appeared. So Phil Rainey, who was the announcer, he made an announcement. He wasn't there at the ring either when Ricky got there. And so he got to the ring and he made an announcement that he had spoken to Gorgeous George Jr. Minutes earlier, and that Gorgeous George said to tell all the fans that he was deathly sick with food poisoning, and he could not possibly wrestle today. Well, as you can imagine, the building erupted in booze. Man.
Oh no! Oh
You know,
no!
they weren't happy
Yeah.
with this
Yeah.
scenario, and needless to say, neither was Ricky Gibson. But a guy came down. The guy was there, and he came down and he said, "I'll take his place." And that guy was David Schultz.
Oh,
So wow, they had a hell of a match, Ricky Gibson and David Schultz, man. But the fans were still unhappy. Basically, but thankfully, they were unhappy with Gigi rather than the company. It was Gigi's idea. So Gigi's heat just got hotter after that incident, man. People were really mad at him now. And Ricky Gibson, obviously, he won the match over David Schultz. Joe LeDuc wrestled the Hangman, and he hung the Hangman in his bear hug. Wow, Joe was a hoss. And the Hangman was a 300-plus pound guy, too. So that was a big-time match. Then the Ronnie Garvin and the Roy Lee Welch Texas Death match was absolutely brutal. Garvin focused on Roy's right arm the entire match, and the second time, now he jumped off on his arm one time, and then he went back up and he jumped off the top rope on his arm again. And Roy's body the second time he jumped was at a bad angle, and it actually and pretty obviously broke his arm.
Oh no!
He landed on it.
Wow.
And it was a nasty break, man, and sickening to watch, and fans were as shocked as I was. I was up on the second balcony when it happened, and I was like, oh God, man, wow, that's horrible looking. So McMurray, man, was a great referee and a sharp guy, man.
Yeah.
And he realized how horrible that bent arm looked, and he grabbed a towel. There was a towel there by the timekeeper's table, and he grabbed a towel and he covered up Roy's arm with it, which I watched, and I was so glad he did that because fans were about to vomit. I mean, it was terrible looking, right?
Wow.
So Roy was taken to the hospital, man, to get a cast put on his arm, obviously, and he never wanted to see, you just didn't want to see a thing like that happen for real. But it was absolutely obvious what had happened, and there wasn't a fan in that building, I can tell you, that could have ever denied that wasn't real. I mean, things like that made believers out of those that didn't believe, especially after they witnessed it with their own eyes.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my years watching the sport. I know I've seen a lot, but I mean, fans must have, they must have told everybody about that after seeing that. Then you see something like that, it stays with you. They must have told everybody.
Oh, well, I'm sure they did, man. I did too.
Yeah.
Like, wow, man. So, and Roy and I talked about it later after, about 3 or 4 days later, and I went to see him and, and he agreed. He agreed that our family members have been real proud of him, man. Herb and Roy Welch and his dad Lester and my dad and all the crazy son of a guns in my family, they would have gone, wow, that's great, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
You really gave it up for the business, man.
Yeah, way to take it. Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, I said earlier that this angle was going to become one of the biggest ever. I can't hardly wait, man, to tell people what's going to happen next week, and what this accidental arm breaking is going to turn into one of the best matches of all time in Southeastern history. So,
wow. So
there was still no Gorgeous George Jr. for the Mongolian Stomper, man. And he didn't show up for the Stompers deal either. For the Southeastern Championship with Tony Charles in the next one. And Tony, man, was going south to Pensacola anyway, and the Stomper proved he really didn't have to have a manager to get a big win. And Stomper got even stronger after that win, beating Tony Charles in the middle. And so did Southeastern Knoxville get stronger, man. It was one of the first benefits I saw of having a second territory. So second man, 6-man cage match was outstanding. Wow. I mean, that building, they rolled. I was surprised the roof stayed on. It lasted for almost a half hour. and it left the assassin beaten and laying with a leg injury, kind of like he was the week before, but this time it was worse. And he was stretchered to the dressing room by an angry Ron Wright and Don Carson and a couple of other people on that stretcher, carrying that stretcher, because the assassin's a pretty big boy.
Wow.
And the assassin was going to never return to southeastern Knoxville again.
Wow. So you had to be a big night. What was attendance like for that day?
Well, there was no fire marshal there.
Oh,
So that's going to make a difference, obviously. And there were thousands more in there than that building would hold. Gosh, there was no doubt about that. I never got an exact number on that crowd, but it was the most people I had ever seen in that building. Ticket sellers, after it was over, a couple of them were usually hanging around, and they told me that they figure at least 2,000-3,000 people got turned away that would have loved to have gotten in.
Man, what is that?
I know it was in excess of 4,000 in a building that probably shouldn't have had 3,000 in it.
Man, don't that hurt when they tell you how much money walked away without getting in?
Yeah, well, and if you notice and you think about this month here, Dave, that we've just gone through, 2 of these matches have been on Monday nights.
Yep.
And the last one is not even in the Coliseum.
Yeah. That's
so,
yeah.
And all those Coliseum, the 3 matches in the Coliseum were all over 5,000 people.
God dang.
So, it was terrible when you get the news from the Coliseum that, hey, you can't have this date.
Yeah.
And you got to go to the little building. Now, it was okay if it was outside in the big old, the park, the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Because you could put more people in the amphitheater maybe than you could in the Coliseum.
Yeah.
So that was okay, but having to go into the little building was really bad, but you got no choice. It's February and it's pretty darn cold outside.
Yeah, and there's a dollar sign attached to those 2,000. I mean, what, $3, $4, maybe $5 with each? I don't know. That's got to be kind of a little sickening to see that walk away. All right, so Stud, good news. It is time for another Learning Tree question. This one comes from a lady. Her name is Claudia McCorkle. She asked, why was Pensacola, Florida becoming the home of Southeastern wrestling rather than Mobile, Alabama, where your father chose in 1954 when he opened Gulf Coast Wrestling? So why Pensacola over Mobile?
Well, I guess she's from Mobile, isn't she?
That could be.
She's a little upset by this.
Yeah.
So she must have been a Mobile resident. But that's a good question, Miss McCorkle. I don't know. I guess that's a good way to recognize you. That decision, I got to tell you right off the bat, ma'am, it was entirely mine. And I have to admit, my decision was made due to only one thing: the beautiful beach.
The beach. I knew that was my answer before. I knew it.
So I was leaving Knoxville and the mountains and the fantastic lakes. With the beauty just about everywhere you looked in the Tennessee and the eastern side of Tennessee. But with so much beauty, I realized that it had a lot to do with the great talent that I'd been lucky to get there. I realized that, wow, it's so beautiful there in Tennessee with the lakes and everything, the guys with their boats and everybody having a great time. And, I was lucky to be in that part of the country and I was benefiting from it. And many of those guys that were there for the short trips and for just being in that gorgeous part of America, man. So during my few trips down to the Gulf Coast Territory before I bought it, I spent one day and a night on Pensacola Beach. And in that day, I realized that I had found another Knoxville, except this one offered something much different than Tennessee. It offered the Gulf of Mexico, man. And so Mobile and Alabama, had the same Gulf there. And they had beaches in Mobile too, but there was one huge difference in the two cities. And Mobile's beaches were kind of a dirty brown color, and wow, the water was even more brown, real dirty, right? And I never could figure out why 50 miles to the east of Pensacola, the beach was so bright it hurt your eyes, man.
Right.
So white. Yeah, you had to wear sunglasses or put your hands over your eyes.
Yeah.
And the water was almost crystal clear. So I could just see those guys in Knoxville, man, with their boats on the lakes, having the opportunity to bring those boats 500 miles south, man, to another different type of paradise, man. And so, in my plans from the very beginning, when I decided I wanted to do this 2 territory thing, was to have 2 bookers and 2 crews, and to switch those bookers and those crews back and forth about every year or so between the Tennessee paradise and the Gulf paradise. So I could have had some of the best wrestlers on the planet begging to get on board that ship, man. I can tell you that. Wow, so for sure. So Ms. McCorkle, to put it simply, Pensacola beat Mobile because of a beach. So sadly, some things were going to change all of my plans, man, in 1979. But that's another story for another day.
Wow. All right. I tell you what, Stud, these Studcasts are so good now with all this stuff going on. I can hardly wait for next week. And next week, we've talked about it. It's going to be very exciting and with a special guest, too. All right, folks on Facebook, please do not friend request the Stud on his Ron Fuller Welch Facebook page. It has a maximum of 5,000 fans. It's been full for years. To become friends with him on Facebook, simply go to either his Ron Fuller, the Tennessee Stud page, or his Ron Fuller Welch author page. Like and follow him there. You automatically become friends that way. And then if anything is posted on either page, it will show up on all 3 pages, so you never miss a thing. On Twitter, you can follow the Stud at Ron Fuller Welch on Twitter. Find everything on Ron's website, tnstud.com. That's tnstud.com. You got Studcast, Super Studcast, historic videos, a photo gallery, his stud store with souvenirs of all kind, autographed photos, tremendous Continental DVD wrestling 5-packs, T-shirts, Tennessee Stud mask, and his chilling novel, Brutus. Visit him now at tnstud.com. You can stay a while. There's plenty to do and see there. Don't forget the brand new Studs streaming channel, ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. We introduced it earlier in this Studcast. It is the future for the Tennessee Stud, Ron Fuller. It's absolutely the future for Ron. Southeastern Rewind YouTube channel has many things, but the fantastic streaming channel, ClassicContinentalWrestling.com, will have everything that the Stud has ever produced in the past, in the present, and into the future as well. It will be added to daily for years to come. Don't miss out on this at all, fans. You don't want to miss it. Stream the Stud's story. Only $4.99 per month. $4.99 per month, or knock it all out at one time, $39.99 per year. You save a lot of money that way. It gets you everything. Get started today and get a free week bonus on your first month. Okay, so where are we riding next week, Ron?
Well, it's a special one, man. We talked about it earlier, and it's going to have a special guest on it to celebrate the opening of my second territory, Southeastern Pensacola. Charlie Platt's going to be with us live, and he was the Southeastern TV commentator. And the wonderful part about this, Dave, is it's almost exactly 44 years to the day from the date that this opening was. And so for the first time ever, we're going to have a Southeastern TV show, and you're going to be live. And Charlie's going to be here with us live, man. I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll keep him straight when he gets to visit you, man. So we're going to talk about the cards in both territories. Andre the Giant going to be in both territories on the next one. We're going to tell a couple of Andre stories in the next one. And we're going to even play the audio from that first interview that I did with Charlie Platt 44 years ago.
Yep.
On that first TV show. And you use some of it in the opening every time I hear it. It reminds me of that interview.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have time for another Learning Tree question next week. I hope we will, anyway. And this upcoming episode, number 240, is going to be a fun one, and it's also going to be a historic one. So please make your plans to join us and tell your friends about this one, man. They might want to experience this next one as well. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us. Please take care of yourselves and others, and may God bless us all, including the Ukrainians across the big pond.
Amen, stud. For Ron Fuller in the Great Smoky Mountains, I'm David Summers saying thank you for listening. Find me at davidsummersproductions@gmail.com. This Studcast is a David Summers production for Tennessee Stud, LLC.
Thanks for joining us today for this historic Studcast. The true story continues next week. So full Nelson your friends and point them in our direction for another ride with the Tennessee Stud.
1, 2, 3.
This is David Summers saying so long from the Great Smoky Mountains.